Hello. Today I'm going to talk you through the final game of my Danish Nationals. It was the finale, and it was against Anders Gerfelt, who has been and is still my personal nemesis. I usually lose to Anders when he's bringing his Germans. Go figure. Um, to to this tournament, he was not bringing his Germans. Anders was bringing a very unusual list that had all FSSP scouts, I think they were called. So they were small two-man units of veterans with rifles, and some had SMGs, and they all had escape moves, essentially. So these were allowed because we had allowed all units that were marked as goes in a normal generic platoon, right? So a lot of units that you wouldn't normally see were suddenly there, and Anders had found this very strange army. It had the highest dice count of any army at the tournament, I believe, but it also at the same time had very little killing power. His main kill power came from one lad mattress, one priest with the howitzer mounted in the hull and the open top, and then one 7+ armored quad HMG half track. And he had two bazookas as well, and snipers, two snipers, and then all small teams. That was it. That was his whole army. So, and we were playing meeting engagement, and I'll talk you through the board, and I'll talk you through some of the tactical decisions. I'll not go blow by blow because it makes very little sense, because Anders' army was all over the place. But I will talk you through some of the ideas about how to win and how not to win this game that I at least had. So, the board looked something like this. We had a beautiful city board, and I will link to a place where you can actually see the board. I'll link to the stream, which is on Twitch, so that you can go and watch the stream of our game. There was this beautiful city board, which had a railway station, a tram car, with an actual tram car located here. We ruled that as rough ground, just because it was difficult to get across. A lot of roads going through the town, and then many houses. A row of houses, and another row of houses, a ruined house down here, another L-shaped row of houses with a ruin at the end, a church, some more industrial houses down here, and then a little bit of forest with a river going through it. That was our map. We had the roads were sort of blocked off and not quite by a little bit of rough ground, like some defensive positions and some leftover civilian vehicles that were just scattered about. So this was the map. Now, Anders got to choose sides, and he chose to be up here, which I was quite happy about, because I really wanted to have this side with the ruin and the corner house here, because I felt like those would give me the best possible places to hide out from his priest. That howitzer is a killer of units if it can connect. But at the same time, I had the issue that he was bringing a multi-launcher, and this was a board with a lot of houses on it. So I really needed somewhere where I could hide, where he wouldn't be able to shoot at me. And that ruin was it. So as soon as I knew which side I was on, I knew where I was going to deploy most of my stuff. It would be behind this ruin. That would be where I went. So my deployment zone, my main focus was to put the units that I felt like needed some protection down here in this area. So we start drawing the dice, and Anders, he correctly surmises that he needs to spread out a bit, and he needs to hold back his killy bits, his his bazookas in particular, because I had 3 Darkest Stewards, right? So those bazookas were going to be key for him if he was to have a victory. And I also knew that my key units would be, yes, the Darkest Stewards would be key in pinning down his stuff. If I could get them to shoot at his multi-launcher and at his priest and at his open-top quad machine gun truck thing, then I could pin those down and he wouldn't be able to do anything. His main kill force would simply be crippled. So I wanted my Darkest Stewards to get that duel. So we were waiting. He was deploying all of his infantry. He deployed broadly. He deployed stuff all over the board. Every bloody where his units were at. And I knew these units were going to be really, really hard to pin down. He also had 3 small teams with SMGs in outflank. And I guess Anders had pretty much calculated what I wanted to do, because his outflankers all came on from this side, which is the only place where I would want to attack anyway. Going up in the other places, I would be in range of a multi-launcher with houses near me. I didn't want to do that. I wanted somewhere where I could have an open field of fire and I could shoot at whatever was facing me. So this place here, I had already decided I would deploy here and I would attack along this route. The problem then for me was how to support my stewards. If I ran too closely together, the multi-launcher would get several targets each time it shot, so I didn't want to do that. I wanted to spread out my stewards so that they had approximately 6.5, 7 inches between them all the time. And at the same time, I also wanted to get some Gurkhas up there, because his small teams and his bazookas and all that, I wanted to charge some of it if I possibly could, which I ended up doing a couple of times. And if I ran Gurkhas up here, he might just shoot at those buildings in the center, where my stewards would be close to them. My Gurkhas would use those as cover. So I had a bit of an issue about how to actually approach his back lines. I also sort of fortified this area over here. I put my 2 jeeps, my darker jeeps here, so they could provide line of fire into these areas, hopefully pinning down whatever he brought on. And I placed 1 unit of Gurkhas here and my artillery observer. Now the artillery observer, if he moved just a little bit, he had line of sight down here, which is what I wanted. He had that line of sight there. He could potentially also do here if I had to shift my focus to the other side of the board. He could pin that bit over there as well. In the end, I did end up throwing it down over here and pinning his multi-launcher, which predictably came on here. This, as soon as Anders had seen that I was deploying down here, he knew that I was going to attack here. He knew he wanted visuals on me. The houses would not be enough. I had too far to the houses. Just there was too much distance between me and the houses. So he knew he wanted to have that direct shot, and he had some hard cover from some fences and some low walls. So he was pretty sure that he could survive there. But I ran my stewards up in attack. One of them unfortunately got hit by his priest. He ran up his priest, and I think this maybe was the only mistake that Anders made during our game. He ran his priest pretty far up, which meant that not only could I shoot at it, I ended up charging it as well with Gurkhas. So that really took my troops up to the front line here. I didn't actually kill him with the Gurkhas though. I ended up killing him with a main gun of a steward, that priest. But he got pinned down. He basically only shot his priest like once during our game. Otherwise, it was he was too pinned, and that was like immobilizing one of my stewards down here. But this steward was pretty okay. It provided fire support. It shot down at his multi-launcher every single turn. I got it pinned. I got it to go down. That multi-launcher didn't actually kill anything during our game. I pretty much had it under control. And when his outflankers came in, they ran straight in front of my my steward, so they didn't do much anyways. They threw a few pins at my Gurkhas moving up there, but it wasn't really that bad. I lost like a few Gurkhas. Most of my Gurkhas got killed when they actually approached his back line. I was pushing up, seeing if I could get back there and come in so close that he couldn't really recce away from me anymore, and that I could maybe charge some of his units. I did charge one of the units, killed it, but by then my Gurkhas were being shot from all the houses and every single unit here, so they took a lot of pins and they took a lot of casualties, and I actually ended up charging the last Gurkha into a lieutenant of his, and he rolled a 5 and I rolled a 2, so he won the combat. In the center here, we were dueling a bit. I had pushed up one of my stewards here with the intention of actually going over here, but this steward got hit by a long-range shot from a bazooka moving in here, and it survived, but I was pinned. So in the end, it took most of my game, because I also rolled the fuba on the steward. It took most of my game to get the steward to work again and just put it up here. So it never actually did anything during our game. It never actually got to fight. The Darker Jeep did what it does. It moved forward, shot a few times, wrecked back when something shot back at it. This Darker Jeep as well, it shot because Anders was moving his quad HMG up here. He ended up here. And I moved my Gurkhas up to maybe charge it, but didn't really. I needed the first die to charge that Darker quad thing. And I didn't get it. Anders simply had too many dies. Each turn he was the first one to go. So I was pretty happy that his forces over there actually had no real targets, and the quad HMG never actually did anything. It never actually killed anything during our whole game. So in the end, I get a draw. I had 3 of his dice, and he had 2 of mine. I had killed his priest and one other unit down here by charging it, and I also shot up some of his outflankers. So I got 3, he got 2 from the Gurkha unit that actually lost the close combat. And it was a very, very close game. I think perhaps I could have pushed, if I had gotten turn 7, pushed a bit more and got some more kills, but in the end it didn't pan out. Maybe I should have not charged that Gurkha into his lieutenant, but gone down instead, tried to survive. There was just so many incoming shots coming at me that I took the chance, and it might have won me the game when I did it. I actually got a die later on. It didn't pan out. So instead, it meant that I got a draw. But the last turn 6, I actually had 2 other chances of getting the win. I had 2 stewards fully loaded with machine guns. One steward needed to kill one guy in Anders' bazooka team, who was staring down at me. He was shooting bazooka shots at that steward. I needed to roll a 7. I didn't. I also had this steward and some small teams up here. I needed to roll a 7, and I didn't. There you go. But at this point, I was pretty happy with it anyway. It was a fun list to play against, Anders' list. It was really difficult to pin down because he just moved away all the time or went down with his small teams. Small team veterans, they're pretty hard to kill if you can't like pin them down and charge them with my Gurkhas. So, and even though it was a draw, it was to my advantage, and it meant that I knew at this point that I had won the tournament, which was what I needed. Anders needed a win against me, and I'm not to be a dig about it or anything, but I couldn't really see how he could get that win, simply because his army was not very killy, right? If you pin down the priest and the dark hair quad thing and his multi launcher, what has he got left? Yes, he can put a lot of pins on you, but there's not a lot of kill power in that army because all of it is small teams with rifles, right? So you'll need the snipers to do some work. You'll need all those rifles to pin something enough that it dies, and that just doesn't happen that often. So I was pretty confident that I would at least get a draw, and I did. I would have been happy with the win, but since it's Anders, I will definitely take the draw. That was my finale. You can go and watch it on Twitch. See if I missed anything important. Cheers.